Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our Standards in Action seminar. I trust you can all see the screens and see everything. As per the normal regulations, we ask that you please keep yourself muted and your videos off during the presentations. You can ask questions in the chat bar or wait until the end of each presentation. We will give time for questions and answers. There are fabulous presentations coming our way, so I look forward to hosting all of you for the next 2 hours. Our first presentation, there you go. There you can see all the normal meeting rules. You can see you can raise your hand if there's something that you urgently need to interject with. There's a microphone, all these buttons that we've come as aware of as we do with the indicator button on our vehicles. There's our agenda for the day. First, we have Kati. I have no idea. I am not going to attempt to pronounce everybody's names correctly. If I make a mistake, I sincerely apologize. I mean no disrespect. Our first presentation is from Austria, and it's on air quality data in near real time. So we look forward to it. Thank you, Kati. You may take over the floor. I think Mats will be as quick as to give you
Hey, let
control.
me find the right screen. This should be working. Okay, I think you're now seeing my right screen.
Yes, it's
My
working.
name is Kati Schleit, and the colleague I did this with is Barbara Magana. I worked on that name for a while. And I'll be presenting you work we've been doing on air quality data in near real time across Europe and then landing in Austria where I'm at home. So starting with the background of all of this. So, I mean, at the start of the century, we had the European Environment Agency in Copenhagen, and that was getting air quality data from various European institutions, not even as shapefiles, but as access databases. These were dark times at the start of the millennium, but then things started happening. And if my mouse would work, even more would happen. Okay, here it is. Okay, so 2007, the Inspire Directive hit the scene. And that started bringing in various technologies coming from OGC, ISO, TC211. Then 2008, the new directive on air quality. New is nicely put, it was new back then. But a new directive on air quality came out on clean ambient air for Europe. And one of the cool bits about this directive was that it actually clearly stated Inspire as the way of transporting data. So we were getting closer to standards. And how did that continue now? 2010, JRC started putting out a project on how can we really do this when we're dealing with measurement data. I'll go into the details of this later. It's just giving you the big picture. So 2010, we started doing first prototypes. How can we really pull all of this together? What is this upcoming Inspire stuff? Bring this together with air quality. By 2012, we had put out both the Inspire data models for environmental monitoring facilities, as well as the European air quality reporting models. By 2016, we had now started replacing these access databases. Austria is providing the air quality data in real time via sensor observation service and web feature service. All the other European countries, to my knowledge, I'm no longer involved in this, are still they're generating GML files, and these are then being transferred via FTP to Copenhagen. And this year, we actually have now taken it to a further level. We've now taken the data which was available on the older WFS and SOS and have exposed that via an OGC API, actually the Sensor Things API. And where we go from here, it's all open. So getting back down into the details. The Inspire directive, I'm not going to tell you any more than showing this slide. I believe Francesco is a few speakers after me. He will give you the details. Everything I will tell you is wrong. The essence of it is that, I mean, it's an SDI for Europe. The legal requirements are totally technology agnostic, but it is very closely modeled on ISO OGC technologies. I remember getting a laughing fit when I read the first directive saying, it must have a request that allows the user to get the capabilities of the service. And first I thought the lawyers had misunderstood that these are request names, but then I realized it has to be agnostic. We can't mandate a service. Okay, a bit more, but it's everything being done normally right now is mostly based on OGC and ISO standards and technologies. It covers 34 spatial data themes, and UML models with GML stereotypes have been created for all of these themes as the basic way forward. So this was the first level, establishing the ISO data models within Europe. Second step was the Air Quality Directive. So this came out 2008, explicitly states that the data provision should no longer be via basically proprietary services between the member states and the European Environment Agency. This should go via Inspire services and be made openly available. This was followed up 2011 by implementing rules, which then really nailed down the details of the data to be provided. And this then, we had consensus that this fits well to the Inspire themes. The environmental monitoring facilities are the ideal basis for air quality monitoring facilities. Inspire area management zones are a good basis for air quality zones. So it was clear this will work with Inspire. It was also clear that there are a lot of things open on these models. A lot of stuff had been emerging at that time. Spatial features were really becoming standardized. Observations and measurements was slowly landing, and their JRC made a very wise decision. I'm not looking at the chat, so I will answer questions later. I'm just seeing that popping around. JRC made a very wise decision to, in the case of the environmental monitoring and real-time data, this goes beyond the classic SDI. Normal SDIs are somehow geometries on maps with some attributes, and they cannot support highly dynamic data. We've got hourly measurements coming in real time that must be provided. So there they did something smart. They contracted prototypes on how to move forward here before the Inspire specification was really started. Some of the basic stuff, some basic themes were being specified by now, but both the environmental monitoring facilities and the area management were still in the future. They contracted four lots in parallel to get different views on this prototype. There I was still involved via Umweltbundesamt, and there we did something cool. We actually managed to join forces on this with the SANI FP6 project, which was trying to explore on a research level how to integrate the various emerging OGC standards for sensor technology into a wider spatial data infrastructure. We joined forces with them, managed to really bring in the cutting edge OGC technology. So we had the observations and measurements model integrated, and we bypassed the web feature service for that prototype. We just did a pure sensor observation service deployment. Got some really interesting feedback at first saying, what is SOS? And we want a feature service, and this is an SDI. But when all was said and done, they realized, oh, there's a reason OGC is pushing these technologies. And based on that, this was then the prototype we then used to continue the European air quality reporting based on this. Next step. Okay, then Inspire started being specified. So we had to define the Inspire environmental monitoring facilities, again, all based on the basic GML and ISO types, all modeled in UML. I'm sure I'm saying something wrong with what's in ISO and what's in OGC. Please bear with me. One of the good bits we had here was that since we had the air quality reporting, we had an exceedingly strong and clear use case. So while the other themes were sort of had vague suggestions, what would be nice, in this case, we had a real world problem which needed a real world solution to be solved basically at the same time. So theoretically it was done in parallel. In reality, the air quality reporting model was done, I think, 3 weeks after the Inspire model. But the nice thing is with A, it was well integrated, and B, it gave us on the Inspire side really everything we needed to assure that this model doesn't just look nice on paper, it has to be functional. We had environmental institutions across Europe testing it, prototyping it, telling us what works, what doesn't. So the good news is now it works. It covers all spatial and organizational aspects. So one thing we do is we provide non-spatial features. So things like stations are obviously, they've got a location. The air quality zones also do. Networks get a bit fuzzier because they're basically a more subtle linkage of stations. You can give them a polygon to somehow nail them on the map, but getting fuzzier. Really fuzzy are things like measurement procedures. We need to provide the information on how the data was measured. These must be first-class citizens. And so we are providing non-spatial features. It strongly integrates the observations and measurement schema, which by this point had finally been formalized as an ISO standard, made it easier to bring this in because there was a lot of pushback saying this is too complicated, but at the same time, there was a clear requirement for real-time data with all of the measurement metadata. So at the end, we managed to really both define the Inspire types and then specialize them to support the full breadth of the European air quality reporting, all of the little extra tricky bits that are required for legal bits, all of that is covered and contained. And the nice bit is that the way this was modeled, if you provide the air quality data structure as your Inspire endpoint, you've basically gotten both requirements covered, because the air quality data can be provided as Inspire since the core is pure Inspire. Okay, next step on this. So by 2012, these dates are not quite clear, and it's amazingly hard to find out when things happened in the past. I tried to do some research and then just gave up. It's approximate. By 2016, okay, all the specifications were there. And by 2016, all the European countries had to report their air quality data, at least in the GML, XML encoding. And so most member states utilized, they'd actually managed to extend the little Access database they had been using for reporting at the start of the millennium, extended that to output XML files. So many member states are still working on the static level. Austria is one of the first countries which really implemented this as dynamic live online services. This is Sensor Observation Service and the Web Feature Service online. And this aggregates all of the data across Austria. It comes in on an hourly basis and goes out, and you can use the data. So it's really a cool resource to work with for various applications. And bringing us to today, so this was something which happened during the spring. It was a sort of a combination of lockdown boredom, and we're currently working on the OGC Sensor Things API. We finally, good news today, we got in the good news that it has been accepted as an Inspire download service. So we will be doing great things with that. But we've been prototyping on that. So based on that, in fact, we have that there. And I was also reading all of these articles on the correlation between intensity of COVID and poor air quality. And somehow between the fact that the data was there and we had cool technology, and the one thing I must say is that the older OGC web services are not easy to use. And digesting the XML can also be a nightmare. That's one of the reasons I have fallen in love with these APIs, because they're so much easier to query and the JSON data coming back is so much easier to use. Anyway, long story short, we were bored, we had time, we had Sensor Things, and this is now the real power of standards. The underlying model of both of them is observations and measurements, ISO 19156. Getting the Austrian data online had taken me almost 2 years, because when I'm figuring out all of the little details of what is odd in the national database and how can I somehow force this to align with the data model, and it doesn't work. And oh my God, doing this work was actually a long weekend because the underlying structures are the same. So I basically just had to take one-to-one, pull the data out of the XML. That was the biggest problem, extracting it from the XML, flip it over to JSON format, push it into sensor things. And I started doing that just with the Austrian data. Then we got pushback from across Europe saying, we want that too. So for that purpose, we then ended up accessing the European Environment Agency's data repositories. That showed us again the problem when you don't have standards, because although all the data goes to the EEA in a standardized manner, they then consume it into their systems. And for normal users, they're still providing poorly documented CSV files, which are different for each concept. So importing the European bit actually took a week. That was due to lack of standards. Okay, and that's actually all I have to say. I think my talk was too short, but it's better than too long. And Francesco, you can say all the Inspire stuff I missed. I give you the 10 minutes. Thank you for everything.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody with any questions at this point in time? You can raise your hand if you wish, or you can put your question in the chat bar. I don't see any questions at the moment. I must say, I don't think the next generation will know the value of or how APIs changed our lives. And when you said CSV file now, I felt a little shiver go down my spine. And I'm so glad that hopefully very soon we will have machine to machine streamlined.
Well, that really hurt me that the XML was taken down to CSV. Whoa. Okay, but I mean, should I provide a slide which has links to this stuff? I realized
Yes, please, that would be wonderful.
Points. Okay, I will send that after the meeting, that I'll do a further back slide, which has both the Austrian SOS and WFS endpoints, as well as the European sensor things we put up. Otherwise, I will stop my presentation and pass back to the rest of you.
I think I'm always curious to see how things change. If you look at air quality data, to see how it was if one could compare from the beginning of 2020 to where we are now. Did you see a significant difference with less transport and air quality? And
the data flow basically hasn't changed. Or again, the experts, I'm sure, will call me wrong, but the structure, the concepts are the same. It's really just the difference of, is it easily available or not? That what I was showing at the start of the millennia, these access databases, they got sent from the member state to the European Environment Agency. And then if you were lucky, the EEA would open something up, and it's slowly but surely getting more open. But once more, I was seriously disappointed that knowing that they have all the data in a standardized format, they then devolve it down, where it does bring me to one important bit. I mean, I adore APIs. You seem to adore APIs. For many purposes, a CSV file is useful. If I want to do a quick graph of something, I'm way faster with a CSV file. I can plop it to an Excel and have a look at than with a JSON file. And I'm a geek. So this is one gap we're going to have to bridge. We've been seeing it with our various sensor services for years, that we need simple tools which consume sensor services and then output something as trivial as CSV for non-standardized applications. If you've got a clear data flow, you don't need that, because your various partners, players in the system know your standards, they've been developed for that, they can consume the JSON. If you're doing a quick one-off look-see at data, you need something flat and tabular. I saw this this spring. I mean, with the COVID outbreak, I didn't trust any media. I was pulling the numbers off Hopkins and graphing it on my own. I could pull it off Hopkins and graph it on my own because it was CSV.
I see we have a question. We have a question that says, are air quality measures available via the web in Europe on the basis of the latest API for Inspire achievements?
Thank you for pointing out to the API Inspire project. That's the project under which we did the provision via SensorThings. So anybody who knows the API for Inspire website, or actually I can put it here for the curious and brave in the chat. And there we have, if somebody is interested in SensorThings, really go to this site because we have been doing all sorts of cool stuff on here. That's also where I mentioned I've actually been playing with getting things like demography data online. And it was actually a follow-up of the air quality data. The air quality data happened in spring due to rampant boredom, and it made sense to me. And based on this, I was sort of fishing around what is happening with COVID data, stumbled across a very cool endpoint at the Technical University of Stuttgart, where one of the students there had exactly this idea and put up a SensorThing endpoint and started importing both the case data from Hopkins for the world, and since he's in Germany, he also took the more explicit German data from the Robert Koch Institute, imported that all into a SensorThings service. We then discussed with him a bit how to refine that. So we had air quality on SensorThings, we had COVID cases on SensorThings, and then I realized if the COVID cases, you need the underlying demography to know how many people were there. 100 people dying in a big city is not as relevant as 100 people dying in a rural community. And I've been playing with the demography data in Europe for quite a while. This is due to the fact that Inspire has some serious issues here. And there just did the silly try of saying, okay, we've got all the demography data on European NUTS regions. I have the European NUTS regions as polygons somewhere in my database. And again, it was a few days. The biggest issue we ran into are, again, the formats provided by the European Environment, not European Environment Agency here, it's Eurostat. All European major institutions have very interesting formats. That's all I'm going to say about them.
Okay. Thank you so much. I believe that, is there anybody else with another question? I see we have 48 participants at the moment.
But anyway, all of those endpoints are at the API for Inspire side. A final plug, we've actually, due to the problems with uptake, because they've got this cool endpoint and what do I do with it? And it's not that easy to formulate the requests and then get that on a map. And one of the things we've done is actually a very simple JavaScript library that integrates both with Leaflet and OpenLayers. This takes all of the SensorThings logic out of your hands and displays this whatever points you have on the map. It does groupings, whatever, all the way down to you have your measurement point, you click on it, and it has Plotly integrated. So, I mean, you can put in your own callback for plotting. Default, you get a simple Plotly graph of the time series. So that's also under the how-to on the website. So all of the issues there, I think, are to a large extent resolved. Now I'm really done.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to I've copied the link. I'm gonna play around there a little bit. Our next presenter is from Norway on the National Standard for Modeling Geospatial Data and Services. It is presented by Morten Borrebæk. And I believe that we have quite a few new participants and we are eager to hear. So Morten, when you are ready, you still have a few minutes before it's your turn. but I will stop sharing my screen so that you can take control.
Okay, thank you. Then I can start sharing my screen when we are waiting for the starting signal.
Yes, but remember, Mats now made a rule that you have to start with a joke.
Okay.
There we
So
go. I can see your screen.
you can see my screen and you can hear me. That's fantastic. So I'm ready when you are.
I think we should give just a minute more for people that want to join so that we can stay with the schedule and remain on time. So if we can just give another, I think 30 to 45 seconds in order to allow for that.
No problem.
Anybody on that's participating at the moment that's not a regular member of the ISO committee, please leave your email addresses in the chat box if you would like to receive our LinkedIn details or receive a newsletter, or because with all the presentations that are here today and that have been presented in the past at similar workshops and seminars are available on our website. So then we can give you details as to where to find that. If you can just leave us an email in the chat box, please. And now it's over to you, Morten.
Okay, thank you. And good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Morten Barbæk. I'm working for the Norwegian Mapping Authority in ISO TC 211. I'm also the convener of Working Group 4 on geospatial services. And I have also been involved in interoperability between the GIS and the BIM platforms. But today I will talk about some work that has been going on the national level. And I don't think I need to give a presentation of Norway, but just mention that it's a quite large area, 324,000 square kilometer land territory and 2 million square kilometer sea territory, and not that many people, 5.3 million inhabitants. But what is more important in this context is that Norway has been active in standardization since the 1990s, actually even before that, as well as some research programs. So Norway has always had a long story on standardization. Also before it was started international work. I will come back to that. We have been active in ISO TC 211 since the start in 1994. And most of the standards from ISO TC 211, they ends up as Norwegian standards through Standards Norway. The agenda for today is actually the last bullet point here, that the Norwegian Mapping Authority, we have a mandate from the ministry to complement official standards when that is needed. And this kind of standards is named SOSI, the Coordinated Approach of Spatial Information. And you can, of course, ask, when there are so many international standards, why do we have to make some complement official standards in Norway? And I hope to answer that by this presentation. I actually have two presentations today, one on modeling and one on how we use the modeling standard. And I will present that after the break, and I will also take my conclusions in connection with my last presentation. I hope that is okay. So I mentioned that we have been active for quite some time now, and we have gone through different stages, and we have always been interested in modeling. We have a modeling approach in Norway, which we have followed from the 1990s. And we started with the ER models, entity relationship models. Some of you probably remember that some time ago. They were very simplified, but it was a start. It was giving some information in a graphical way that helped the users to understand the data. We also had a quick look into express modeling. That was also in the view of both ISO TC211 in the very early days and also on the European standardization CEN TC287, the work which we did there, which was transferred to ISO. Further on, 1997, we switched to object modeling, but not for a very long time. When ISO decided to use UML and UML class diagram and the object constraint language, we switched to UML, and we have been following ISO TC211 standards and UML until today. So these are different levels of conceptual formalism, and this will probably continue to change in the future. Nothing will be unchangeable. Also focusing on national standards. I mentioned the umbrella name SOLSI, Coordinated Approach for Spatial Information. And it's not the first version I mentioned here, but it is version 1.4 from 1990, where it was quite small, only 7 teams plus Cadastre. We had our own syntax exchange format, and it was very thematic code oriented, but it was a good start. It was easy to explain for the users how this standard worked. Moving on to a bit later, 1994, we had version 2.1, 19 teams, and the teams are, of course, getting bigger all the time, where we actually introduced the term product specification. Further on, version 4, 2007, and until 2016, that's where we started to work with national standards, fully compliant with standards from ISO TC211. 57 teams, generic team models was the focus. And finally, up to now, version 5 from 2016 and to 2020, where we have a focus on data product specification and, of course, data product specification according to ISO 19131 data product specifications. Different development stages. Ontology is important and is getting more and more important. This diagram or picture is from Stage 0 project on ontology that the committee did some years ago, where we see that there is an evolvement here from weak semantics to strong semantics. And we are still at the UML level, SOLSI version 4.0 in our national standards. But we do, of course, look into OWL and RDF and schools. So we are always working in the direction of stronger semantics. And we hope to do that in close cooperation with the ISO TC211, of course. So the National Spatial Data Infrastructure for 2020, you have probably seen the figure on the right. It is used in several documents, and we have a similar one in Norway. And in this context, it is the data and the content which is the focus for this presentation. And all the data and content, which we used to call the knowledge base of the infrastructure, is modeled according to international standards. And there's also a requirement in our technological framework for the SDI that it should be modeled. The technological framework, that is not a standard, but it's a document provided as a cooperation between the stakeholders. So it is a normative document, and it has several requirements. Some of these requirements are related to national legislation, here under INSPIRE, of course, but there are also some requirements you can call best practice requirements, following up this model approach, and then stating a requirement that these models should be modeled according to national international standards. So far, so good. Then let's move on to what we do at the national level. And as the title say, we have a national standard for modeling geospatial data and services. That's the picture you see to the right. And it has a lot of normative references, and it's actually here it begins. When I give this presentation now, I see that I have mixed some numbers here, so let's not look at the numbers but the name. We have normative references to the conceptual schema language, to the spatial schema, to the temporal schema, rules for application schemas, coverages, GML, observation and measurements, data quality, and finally the procedures for the item registration. Which means that we have taken the conceptual part from these standards, putting them all together in one document, focusing on making it easier for the national users to read these standards, to catch the requirement that they involve, with examples, for example, on UML in Norwegian language, and also for Norwegian teams. And yeah, so the whole idea behind this is a kind of an outreach, but we do outreach in the form of national standards. But it goes beyond ISO. I mean, the European interoperability framework and the reference architecture is of course also very important normative references. And finally also the RFC 5656, I think that is on language, ISO 639, 8601 on time and date, etc. And we also extensively use the reference model for the open distributed processing. This modeling standard doesn't only focus on UML application schemas. You see in the figure to the right that it starts with business processes, BPMN 2.0, and also including Archimate. Archimate is not really UML as we understand it, but it's often implemented in the same tools that implement UML, for example, Enterprise Architect. We use use case diagrams also according to UML2. We have service models according to UML2, and finally UML application schemas. And in addition to this, we describe our registry in similar to ISO TC 211 and the harmonized model repository. We have a repository of the models that we have provided for our SDI. We also have some annexes to this. We have a use case template as an informative description on how you could describe use cases. We have examples on how these different model approaches fits together. How could you actually include a UML application schema in a process diagram? We have another example or annex on how to model national data based upon INSPIRE. Again, this is quite a general mechanism from UML2, where we realize concepts in INSPIRE in the national infrastructure. It seems very easy, but it is not. I have to say that the willingness among Norwegian users to actually apply this modeling technique is not very large. It seems to be just another level of confusion. So that's something we have to work with. And finally, we have a template for the textual description of the models. We generate them automatically from the models in the same way as we have done on some of the standards in the ISO TC 211 family. So this is some examples on diagrams or models that we explain in this standard. And they are in Norwegian, of course. I do not think it's not my intention that you should read them, but just see that there are different kind of diagrams. And yeah, the first one is not really a special diagram, but it's how we handle multilinguality, which is also an issue in Norway. We have the business process modeling notation with the famous pizza story, how to order a pizza, not really related to spatial information at all, but it probably makes it easier for users to understand. We have service specifications, how you move from an abstract specification to a platform independent specification, and finally to a platform specific service specification. A bit theoretical, I must say, and this is one of the areas where we probably need to revise a little. We have use cases. We use the citizen portal just as an example on how we do use cases. Lower left, we have a SOSI profile of ISO 19109, the general feature model, which means it's not fully identical. It is conformant, of course, with the ISO standard, but there are some minor modifications. And I think that one of them is that a feature property element always have to be related to a feature type. And I think the general feature model is not that strict, but that is a detail. We also focus on object diagrams, as you see in the middle on the lower part. And finally, we have a very simple introduction to UML. This is not a learning book on UML, but we have one page focusing on the most important constructs of UML. Yeah, that was actually the end of my first presentation. So I think we have a few minutes for questions.
Does anybody have a question? I don't see any hands raised at this point in time. I would like to, if nobody else has a question, you make it seem so easy and seamless. What were some of the challenges that you faced along the way in getting to this, to the point where you are now at version 5?
Yeah, one of the challenges is, of course, that it's quite time consuming to do this. It takes quite a lot of resources. And that is also resources that could have been applied more directly for the international standards. So yeah, it's a difficult issue. I think the Norwegian users, and not only the Norwegian users, but I think users in general, they find the ISO standards quite difficult if they are not really involved in this in some places. It's quite hard to buy a bunch of ISO standards and start reading them and start implementing it. So in any way, you need to form some kind of groups where people sit together and trying to discuss how this actually works and how it should be implemented. And I think that is what we have obtained by this process. the question is if we are, what should I say, so experienced now in the infrastructure that that kind of outreach maybe is not that important anymore. But I focus on maybe. I mean, most people still find ISO standards quite complex.
I think they are complex, but their benefits are felt after all the hard work has been done. We have another question here saying any key level information on feedback from SOSI and a return on investment.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Any key level information on feedback from SOSI and return on investment?
Yeah, good question. We more indirectly we do have that because in Europe we have established something called the Location Interoperability Framework Observatory. It's an action within the ISA program of the European Commission. And related to this, there are some recommendations on how to integrate spatial information with more general data from public administrations. And in this situation, there are also some recommendations on standards. And as a result of this, a questionnaire has been put out, and one of the responses there is actually the return of investment. It's not only related to standards, but it's more related to the SDI in general. But of course, the standards is an important part of the SDI. So indirectly, we do have some feedback on the of the return of investment. But I do not have any numbers to provide you here. Maybe I can add that in my last presentation.
Yes, I think that's always, I think, what the financial people would want to know. If you do all this work, what are the financial benefits? But we have a last question from Australia. Do you have any suggestions on how to engage groups in taking up modeling system? I'm finding it a problem. So if you can leave us with a cheer of inspiration, please, Morten.
Yeah, a cheer of inspiration and the hard work. I think most of the countries, they have some kind of organization around this. And I think the issue here is to have some group who will also be responsible for the standards. I mean, in the large SDI groups, standards is part of it, but it seems that focus often goes more on other SDI issues. So specific groups on standardization with mandate to use standards and implement standards in the SDI, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Morten. Eva, do you feel inspired?
If I am inspired?
No, if Standards Australia feel they are equipped. Jan from Denmark has a comment.
Yes, actually, yes, thank you very much. Actually, in support of what Morten just said, legislation could also help in improving or high-level governmental support might improve the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Okay, Morten, if you can hand the screen back to me, then I can introduce the next speaker.
I will do that. Hold on.
But thank you so much for your first presentation of the day. We look forward to your next one.
Yeah. I just got a small, oh, okay, here I found it, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. I would like to introduce our next speakers. It's Meng Yin. I'm not Yogi, from the Tsinghua University in China, enabling standardized encoding for sensor positioning information using ISO 19130 Part 3. I will stop my share so that you can have control of the screen.
Thank you for your introducing. Let me
I
find.
apologize for, if you can introduce yourself more beautifully, I would appreciate it, because I feel I made a bumble of the names.
My name is Meng Jing. You can call me Meng. Is it difficult to pronounce?
No. I was just not sure if it's Meng or Mang. So it's good to know now. Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay. Could you wait for like 1 minute? I think the Zoom has some problems. Like just 1 minute. I will come back later.
If anyone wants to run and grab a quick cup of coffee or glass of water while they sort out their Zoom problems, I think now is an opportunity for that. Let's see what you can do in 45 seconds. There you are.
Yeah, thank you for your waiting. I will start right now. So you can see my screen now, right? And you can see my face as well. If
Yes.
we're facing the problems of like the network problem, I will stop the video. But so far, so good. So hello, everyone. My name is Meng Jing. I'm a PhD student working with Professor Bai. And it is also my first time to work with the ISO community. I'm very honored today to introduce the user story of ISO 19130-3 on behalf of Professor Bai. He's with me now. And he's the project leader of this standard. So the previous two stories from Austria and Norway, I should say is very impressive. So they provide a very good examples for us. But since ISO 19130-3 is still under development and is very new, so we haven't got an excellent actual user story as others did. But the ISO 19113-1 and -2 have been published for some time. So we believe our standard will be promising in some applications in the future. So based on my understanding, the ISO TC 211 is about the geographic information and the geomatics. It's focused on the digital geographic information. So the location does matter a lot. The location information is one of the fundamental steps before use for like most sensor images in most of their applications. So fortunately, we have the ISO 19130-1 and -2. They have specified comprehensive sensor models describing the physical and geometric properties of each kind of photogrammetric, remote sensing, and other sensors that produces imagery data. And they also define a conceptual data model that specifies the minimum content requirement and the relationship between the components for each kind of sensor. However, the lack of an encoding standard makes it difficult to implement these great geopositioning models in a real case. So here comes our 19130-3 standard. Since the ISO 19113-1 and -2 have already defined these sensor models, and they have already provided us with conceptual models. So what we need to do is to find a language to describe these models and parameters. And OGC have already developed a sensor model language. It can represent lots of processes related to sensors. It's already relatively mature and is ready to use. So we took full advantage of these two standards. We encoded the geopositioning models defined in ISO 19130 series based on the SenseML syntactic. So how we achieved this? I won't spend lots of time on introducing the technical details, but the key idea is trying to align the two sensor models between OGC and ISO as much as possible. If it couldn't find a matching element, we will introduce a new element as the profile of SenseML. So the resulting specification could be found in the ISO 19130-3 standards, which haven't been fully published, but I believe will be very soon. And the encoding descriptions are listed in the table in the file and as shown on the right side. Besides, some examples have already been uploaded to the GitHub repository. So basically, this encoding schema can help to implement geopositioning models. And here's an example of a SAR image. It shows how the images are registered from the sensor to image, and then finally to an actually Earth's location. And the corresponding model parameter descriptions are listed on the right side. Although it's still very new standard and it's under development so far, we haven't applied it in a real case, but we have already successfully applied it in some active observation and passive observation sensors. Like on the left side, there's metadata description for Landsat 8 image, and on the right side is for a Sentinel-1 image, which you could find on the GitHub page. And besides, we also designed some scenarios for potential usage in the future. So who will be our users? It could be ground segments or satellite image dispatching office for emergencies or image servers under sensor web contexts. So first, for ground segments, the geopositioning process is very important for data production. However, most of the ground segments are developed and designed independently. So they don't have a reusable models for geopositioning process, and which is very important and could be used in lots of situations. So with our standards, this process could be reusable and very easy to implement if like for future, if you need to build ground segments. So, and second case is for emergency response situations. Like in some emergency response situations, it's very important to precisely align diverse image data acquired by different sensor systems. For example, here's some image from Sichuan province in China, where lots of earthquakes happens like frequently. So we could see here lots of satellites have images covered this area, like CBERS or Aster Spot 5. Once we need to get a full image of this area from the pre-earthquake to post-earthquake process, you need to align these images geographically. So our standards could help to quickly align these images, which is very fundamental and important for this situation. And thirdly, under sensor web context, it's important to obtain the geometric features. Well, currently you can see the metadata have already described some geometric features using some ISO standards, but for geopositioning process specifically, there's no metadata to describe this process. So the ISO 19130-3 have provided the ability to describe the geopositioning models and parameters, which makes the geopositioning process more transparency, and you can put more parameters in your metadata. And finally, this is very similar to the previous points, which it make the geopositioning process trustworthy. Here is the image of the metadata of Landsat 8. They have already listed some parameters related to the geopositioning process, but it still lacks some information like the ground control points and like the positioning parameters of sensors. They don't have a standard description of sensor geopositioning models. This is the example of Landsat 8. And for Sentinel, they have another language to describe it. So with this set of description, it can promote the trustworthy remote sensing, which is a trend in the future for remote sensing image management. So I will stop here for my presentation and welcome for questions. And me and Professor Bai is here for your question. Yes, thank you everyone.
Thank you very much for that. We have 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has a question or a comment.
If there's no question, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the status of our standard, which have already been approved and under development. And we also published like article, academic article on remote sensing journal. It introduced the process and the method and the story behind this standards and some lessons learned and some potential for future usage. If you are interested, you can access through this URL, which I will put it on the chat box later. Thank you. Any questions?
There is one question, I'll read it for you. It's any idea for geopositioning service in addition to geopositioning process? For standard.
Sorry, I beg your pardon?
I'm going to read it to you again. Any idea for a geopositioning service standard in addition to a geopositioning process?
Mm-hmm. You mean for geopositioning service standards?
As a standardization action. I am just reading, so unfortunately I cannot give you more information. If you would like to ask your question, it would be fine.
Emmanuel Devis here.
Hello.
Hi. So you mentioned the interest of the geopositioning process for exploitation of Earth observation imagery. So my question is if you have any suggestion, recommendation for the standardization of a geopositioning service based on what you presented.
Hello. Yeah, thanks, Emil, for raising this good question. We and Mon and you and previously did have a good discussion on this. We believe that besides the standardized encoding of the geopositioning information to be geopositioning services would be a good idea. And unfortunately, so far, this 19130-3 only covers the encoding of the geopositioning information. So therefore, in the near future, in terms of geopositioning services, we believe on one hand, we need to fully align with the what we suggested in the 19130-3 to encode the geopositioning information. And on top of that, we may leverage though the service interfaces defined in the OGC SenseML or other OGC processing services, some other available service standard to propose a dedicated sensor positioning services interfaces So we believe that it would be a desired way to enable the geopositioning services in the near future.
Okay, thank you, Yuchi.
Thank you, Yamir.
Any more questions from anybody?
Yes.
In that case, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I am sure we all of us enjoyed you. Good luck on your PhD studies.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will stop my sharing so that.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Okay. Here you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. For your first time, it was wonderful to listen to you. We hope to see you often in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our next presentation for the day, and I would like to thank everybody for helping us to stay on time during this seminar. We have the European Inspire Directive and Location Interoperability by Francesco.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Yeah.
Yes. Good morning also from my side. I'm just sharing the screen for Francesco.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the invitation, in particular to our colleague supporting us almost full-time, Simon Brecker, for organizing this event. And we are really happy to be here today. Today, myself and Lorena, we share a bit this presentation, a few slides to explain a bit which is the important link between Inspire and the ISO in the ISO context. We will start with the importance of European location interoperability. And in particular, we are going to speak about ELISA, which is one of the action of an ISA program. It's a program from the European Commission, which is an enabler for location interoperability in Europe. And also we will give some information about Inspire and ISO and the close relationship that we have since years. Also, Lorena will continue with providing you, an overview of the studies.
I apologize to interrupt, but the presentation seems to be displaying incorrectly on my side. Can everybody else see clearly?
Yes, same
yes.
here.
We are still on the agenda, I think.
Is that any better now?
No, it has a line through the middle. Maybe if you leave
I think Lorena has two screens and are sharing the wrong screen. So.
Lorena, you may.
Good.
Is that better?
Okay.
Perfect.
It's better, but you have to go to the previous slide.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So I was on the agenda. And so Lorena will continue to give an overview of the studies and framework that we have developed in the last years, and also the effort we are making towards the semantic interoperability. Next slide. What we would like to give you is now the importance of this context according to the all various initiatives of the European Commission. In particular, we are part of a program, the ISA Square program, which is the interoperability solution for public administration, and there is an European interoperability framework, different level, legal, organizational, semantic, and technical. And we are supporting this framework that also recently developed tools and a set of recommendations. This is also linked to other, let's say, declaration initiatives of the European Commission, the Tallinn Declaration, Building the Data Economy, Communication, AI for Europe, in particular ISPAR, e-government action plan, open data directive, European data strategy, and also we will continue these activities in the future in the frame of the Digital Europe program, which is a program that will start next year. It will be a 7 years program and a very big program, research program for the Commission. Next slide, please. As I said, the geospatial location interoperability has been a major feature of both ISA program, and also before we had the ISA. The ISA Square program is from 2016 to 2020, and now it's going to finish. As I said, there will be the Digital Europe program starting next year, and we are now defining our participation. You can see in the ISA program, we had ELISE, before was a ULF and ARENA, and the follow-up would be another action that we are now deciding how to call and which is the focus we want to give. We are moving in the past years from static maps to location intelligence. Location intelligence definition, we have found one of the definitions to enable new ways of delivering public value and making services and government procedure digital by design. So it's about the use of digital technology, integrated part of governments, modernization, transformation strategy, and also to create public value. So in the future, also what I would like for you to know for the Commission is very important now, the modernization of public administration. And this is also is the future. So not only the public administration should put available data in a digital, but also the use of digital platform, the participation of citizens, and all these aspects, the digitalization of citizens, all these aspects need to be integrated in the public service delivery, including, and not, it's not a trivial, let's say, a challenge to have also data from private sector, from business community. This is everything we are trying to enable with this action. So we moved from raster data and maps to GIS, SDI, location enablement, and location intelligence. And finally, we would like to achieve a digital economy and society goal. We move to the next slides.
Sorry, I apologize to interrupt you. May I just please, we are still having a slight problem with the display of the presentation. I believe that the wrong screen is being shared at this point. If we can just, we have that line again in the middle.
Okay.
If I may just pause you.
But
I apologize.
Yeah.
Sorry, but just to let me know, are you seeing the speaking notes or the presentation?
We're seeing the speaking notes and the presentation.
Okay, I will just disconnect, sorry, the other screen to see if that is better now. Sorry, I will start again sharing it.
Luckily, you are amongst friends, so it doesn't matter. It's I think something that has happened to every single one in this participants list at least twice a week for the past 6 months.
Okay, how can I put this aside? Is that better now? I have several things, I cannot remove them, but can you see it now?
Yes, yes. Can everybody see it clearly now? It's beautiful. Absolutely no problems. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I apologize for the pause.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we are you know, if we had the physical meeting, would have been much easier probably, but this we have to do our best. So the INSPIRE directive is very central for this work, and is establishing an infrastructure for spatial information in Europe to support community environmental policy. And this is based on the infrastructure of spatial information, which this is operated by member states of the European Union. This directive addresses 34 spatial data teams, which are collected in 3 groups, so-called annex, as you can see. This makes INSPIRE a unique example of legislative regional approach. Also, to ensure that the spatial data infrastructure of the member states are compatible and usable in a community and transboundary context, the directive requires that common implementing rules are adopted in a number of specific areas. For example, metadata, data specification, network services, data and service sharing, and monitoring and reporting. It's also important to mention that for each data team, INSPIRE defines conceptual and physical data models that enable technical and semantic interoperability across borders and also across the various sectors. Next slide. The next slide, the next slide shows the roadmap. And this is a decade of years, and now approaching October now in 2020, we had the deadline for having all the data set of Annex fully interoperable, harmonized according to the data models. I think there is a big effort on this goal, and now there is this let's say approach of the INSPIRE will be also used for the new coming important priority of the European Commission, namely the European data ecosystem, that is an ecosystem of data that will support each of the thematic areas: energy, transport, environment, data, and also support the overall goal of the EU Green Deal, which is one of the main priorities of this Commission. Next slide. Okay, now in relation to that, the ISO standards underpin the established of pan-European data infrastructure as defined in the INSPIRE directive. INSPIRE could be considered as one of the biggest test cases and uptake initiative of ISO in the world. And the standards are extensively used for the creation of non-legally binding INSPIRE technical guidelines, documents, and mentioned before, which are also, there is here a list of them. The ISO standards are used as building block for the encoding of data and metadata, and for network services for discovery, viewing, and downloading of the data. Next slide is, we are talking here about the benefit. The benefits, but yeah, benefits for the user. What we see as a benefit is the improved transparency in sharing geospatial data, the optimization of the process between the different organizations, easy sharing of data across different borders, either at regional or national level, and also in different application domains, and also better interaction of user and providers of data, minimize the risk of vendor lock-in, and standards are a catalyst for data-driven information. And all INSPIRE implementer encourages, and therefore, to consider submitting good implementation practice based on different standards, for example, ISO and technology. And there are more details available in the link that you can see. And that's a bit, I leave here my intervention. I give the floor to Lorena. Lorena will speak a bit more about what we have produced on ELISE as studies, as product, and give you a bit of an overview.
Okay,
Lorena,
thank you,
the floor is
Francesco.
yours.
Yes, thank you. So sorry for not showing my camera, but I do not dare to to open any other setting, provided it works okay. So indeed, Francesco gave a good introduction of INSPIRE, and the ELISE action has been really supporting INSPIRE, I would say, since the beginning, also from the other actions, in this case, EULF and ARENA. You'll know about this later. But just as a small summary, then the ELISE action is one of the 54 actions that are present in the current European Interoperability Program, known as ISA Square, sorry. And this program is aiming at providing better public services, taking into consideration cross-border and cross-sector interoperability solutions. So really to make Europe a real digital single market, a place where services can work seamlessly. But in this case, the input that ELISE is giving is let's say the focus on the location. So how the geospatial information can really enter into these digital public services and make a difference. By the way, I didn't mention it, but ELISE stands for European Location Interoperability Solutions for e-Government. Now, digital government, it depends on the maturity level of each of the governments, and it would be for the benefit of different target. It could be for public administrations in the first case, but also as a consequence for businesses and citizens. So very quickly, if I can, yeah, okay. ELISE has been carrying out and still carries out this activity according to different outputs. There are ELISE studies, but they are also funding the development of tools and frameworks. And also about, let's say, knowledge transfer activities, as for example, we could consider this one, where we are basically outreaching to the ISO world and saying what we are doing. So if we come back to the studies, I won't go at all through all of these studies, but that's just, we use this slide as a gallery to understand, to let you know what we've done regarding location-enabled digital government transformation. And because our presentation is about INSPIRE, we wanted to highlight the ones that are particularly dealing with the INSPIRE topics that are gray out with this very light pattern. I hope you can see it. And is particularly relevant in this forum to highlight the report Architectures and Standards, Guidelines for Spatial Data Infrastructure and Digital Government, where there's a very big representation of ISO standards there. So if you would like to have a look, please, then in the presentation, you can follow the link or even check it in the small link that is presented in the corner, and you can have a look at it. Then if we move to the frameworks, there is, let's say, a GWAL framework that ELISE has produced already, actually started under the EULF action, the previous action. It's called the European Union Location Framework Blueprint, or between us a blueprint, just to have it more easy. This document is a guidance framework to allow introducing location intelligence in digital public services. And the report is quite original and modular, because you can, I mean, it's not a report that you need necessarily to read from A to Z. You can access it by focus area or by role. By role, it could be from a policymaker really to the people who's really targeting, handling the data. And I want to draw the attention to a comment that was raised before by Morten. There's among the focus areas, the return on investment. I think he was mentioning this one, but because we are in this forum, I also wanted to draw the attention on the focus areas dealing specifically on standardization and reuse. Under each of the focus areas, there are recommendations, and here just I wanted to highlight one that is very much in scope. This document is available in form of a report. We are already in the version 4, but you can also access it in an online version that is also being upgraded. And if you would like to know more about how this document is designed, there is a nice introductory video that you can also watch. Okay, then very quickly about the solutions that ELISE has supported, and this is really standards in action because we are really relying on what ISO has produced so far. ELISE has funded the development of two solutions. There's the validator, and then I will speak about the registry very quickly. These two solutions are released under as open source under the UPL license, sorry. And they have been instantiated in the Inspire infrastructure, and they have become really a building block in these SDIs. The validator, as the very same name says, is about checking the conformance test to really make that the data sets are understandable by different organizations, that they make sense and they can maybe be used seamlessly. I just put a picture of the current service. It will be upgraded to meet the new corporate image in the next months. But if you look at them, you will recognize many of the standards and basically we are using in the abstract test suite and executable test suites many of the ISO and ISO application profiles. Then very quickly on the registry, because I'm conscious of time, the registry is a software that has a completely purpose. It's about managing and publishing reference codes. And yes, it's following fully the ISO 19135 registration working implementation. And this is valid for the life cycle of the registered items, like for example, in the image, in the right, I put a value like the contamination. The status is part of this life cycle, but also let's say is governing the people or the team who's behind approving or rejecting the different requests. And for example, here in the foreground, I put a picture of the new registry software that has been recently released. It allows really to have all this process completely well organized. And in the image, you can see that a submitting organization, and that's an example where they are asking for a change, and it's on the point to be sent to the control body, and then we'll figure out if it's valid or it's a request that has to be rejected. So this gives me the opportunity just very quickly of continuing on the idea of the semantic interoperability. ELISE, but also Inspire and previously the other actions really believe that the common vocabularies are essential to interoperability in general, but they also allow to be reused in innumerable ways. First of all, by organizing knowledge, but also they can be used, for example, now they are very in our everyday life as training data sets for artificial intelligence powered services, let's say. And for sure, they will become one of the cross-cutting aspects that will connect the future European data spaces. Somehow, Francesco mentioned them earlier. And I would like maybe to finalize, bridging the ISO TC 211 world with the W3C. There have been plenty of initiatives in ELISE where those worlds were coming together, were speaking together. I won't go at all through all of this because there's no time, but I just want to highlight that we are currently working on an activity so-called Inspire Synonyms. Inspire Synonyms is just, let's say, an excuse for us to test in a controlled scenario like Inspire or non-scenario familiar to us. To test methodologies that would allow to break out the semantic barriers, let's say the Inspire jargon, and to reach out to other communities. In practical terms, for example, if you go to the Inspire Geo portal and you look, for example, for the word farm, you want to have geodata resources that have to do with harm, you have very little possibilities to find out something because simply farm was not in the data specification, it's not in the model. So we are trying to map these words with other vocabularies so that the user has more chances to get resources. And if you feel that is interesting, there will be a webinar next week, particularly on this, on the methodologies and the possible solutions that could be done in this regard. So if you feel like, please register. We will be very happy to have you on board. And with this, I finalize. I'm sorry if I went too quick, but this is it. I'm happy to respond to any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was, I must say, it's a big topic to cover in 20 minutes, and I think you did an excellent job of it. Thank you so much. Would it be possible for you to just send the webinar details in the chat box so that anybody that feels like joining next week can have quick access to it? May I ask you to please do that?
Sure.
That would be wonderful. And I know I would love it. And is there any questions at this point? I don't see any hands raised. And with that, we have come to the end of the first half of our seminar. Thank you so much for all the participants that are still here. You can all now have a quick coffee break. So please remember to use your coffee cup icon if you haven't used it yet. We will have a video that plays again during this time. So you feel free to enjoy that, and we will see you back in. May I ask that you be back in 7 minutes? Thank you.
Graham, I'm not sure if you're expecting to broadcast you drinking your coffee to everybody, but that's what we're currently.
Good morning, Peter. How are you? I'll turn my video off. So
fine, thank you. I'll just go and get something for me.
Marna?
Tandy, I was almost sure I heard your voice now.
Yes, Marna. I just wanted to alert you that we couldn't hear anything throughout your video.
Oh no, and I'm so sorry. And I did click the button, but you know what? You've heard all those gentlemen speak before. They all said something very, very valuable. I will play it again at the end of our seminar.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Tandy. Thank you for trying to alert me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And now everybody is back right on time for the next presentation that we have today. And that is on product specification for data products, data sets or data set series, again by Morten Borrebæk. Morten, you may share your screen when you are ready. Oh dear, where's Morten?
Hello?
We are on time and ready for you for your second presentation if you are.
Okay, thank you. I will share my screen again. Yeah, you see my screen in presentation mode?
Thank you, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. My name is Morten Borrebæk from the Norwegian Mapping Authority. For those of you who not attended the presentation before lunch, I will just mention that I had a presentation on modeling in general earlier today, and this is actually a follow-up on these models. So what do we do with these models? And this presentation will have focus on product specifications. And not surprisingly, what we do on product specification in Norway, as an addition to the official ISO standards, we have provided our own SOLSI product specification. But it has two additions, and that is the control and the approval of these product specifications. And the normative references for this is, of course, ISO 19131 data product specification. We have an earlier version of metadata. I know that it is not updated according to the latest version of ISO 19115. That is the challenge with these SOLSI standards, as we call them, the coordinated approach of spatial information. It takes quite resources to update them according to the development or revision cycles of international standard. But anyhow, the most important normative reference is this rules for this UML modeling, and that was the presentation I had earlier today. And secondly, we have a Norwegian standard called Geodata Quality, and not surprisingly, it is based upon ISO 19157. And I mentioned that there are some additions according to the international work, that is the control and the approval of the specification. And this process has been authorized to the Norwegian Mapping Authority. So if we manage to make the users to write good data product specification, our process on authorization will be much more smooth. Another extension we have done, not really extension, but it's a requirement that we should have an information model as part of the product specification. And we have also a standardized template for the presentation of the data product specification. It's important that they have the same structure, particularly when you see how many product specifications there are in our SDI. I mentioned this figure also earlier today, the National Spatial Data Infrastructure, and again, it is the data and content part. And I stated that all the data should be modeled, and that is a requirement in our technological framework. But it's not only a requirement that it should be modeled, it is also a requirement that it should be that these models should be included in data product specification. And we have actually 3 types of data product specification. They are all based on ISO 19131. And the first one, that is what we call conformance level 1, is the conformance level where public administration, they makes a product specification for the data that they already have in their databases, and they do not need to have an authorization from the Norwegian Mapping Authority. The second one is identical, but it goes through our authorization and check if it fits with the implementation procedures in the SDI. And the last one is the one that is getting more emphasized now, that is to have standardized data product specification. It means that you are not only looking for the existing data, but you are looking for use cases and user stories stating what kind of data which is required. And the knowledge base of the SDI, which is what we call the data and content part, it should then be specified as data product specifications. And this is from the registers and the portal of the SDI. I will try to give a demonstration of this. I will just mention first that this is from the register, where there are 177 product specifications. And this product specification is the fundament for different kind of data products in the infrastructure. In the portal, we have today, or at least yesterday when I checked this, we had 5,731 data sets and 36 data set series. And they are all based upon 177 data product specification. Maybe I should be fair and say that they should be based upon 177 data product specifications, but this is still a process, and I'm quite sure if you look into this, you will see that some product specification is missing. So I will try to give a short demonstration of this. I do not have so many slides here. I assume you can still see this picture. And this is from our portal. If I move now to the registers, there's a lot of registers, but there's one that is of interest now. That is the product specification. And wow, it has changed to 182 since yesterday. That's a good progress. And here we have, for example, administrative units for Norway. You can download it. I don't think I should do that now. You can show the UN model. It's a web browser directly for the models. You can click on the data types, for example, and you see the UML diagram for the data types. And similar, you can show the GML application schema. This is quite ordinary in any SDI, of course. If I move to the map catalog, I have this data set on administrative units for municipalities. If I click this one, unfortunately, all of this is in Norwegian. I know that makes it difficult, but here you have a tag called show product specification. So each of these products, they should have reference to the product specification. And this is the one I showed you just a few seconds ago. So going back to my presentation again. We have this harmonized model repository. We do not only have product specifications here. We have standards from ISO TC211 from OGC. We also have models from IHO and some from W3C. I think this is actually more placeholders, but we will see that this will be more important in the future. We have European specification, Inspire models. We are looking into the UNGGIM. But what is our main interest today is, of course, these product specifications. This specification, as they are now, they work quite well for the geospatial domain, but as part of the public administration's data infrastructure, we need to make them available also in other forms. And from this registry I showed you with the examples from the data type, for example, and this registry is based upon ISO 19135, the register standard, and they are harvested into the national catalog. And this is primarily a national data catalog for data sets, but there are two additions. It is also for concepts in general, but there's also another extension on models. We use something called DCAT Data Catalog. It's a vocabulary developed by W3C and applied within the European ISA program. And we have made a few extensions to this. One is on models. We have provided a meta model for models from different public administration. And we have also an extension in the form of data quality vocabulary, which means that we take over quality elements and map them to DQV from W3C again. Okay, in my previous presentation, I was challenged on this return on investment, and I promised to come back with a few slides on that. And this European Union location framework, they have provided some recommendation, and that was also mentioned in the presentation from Inspire. We have standardization and reuse, and we also have some on return on investment. I will not give a presentation of all the primary and secondary indicators of each of these, but I can show you just a few examples for how this fits for Norway. And again, this is related to how well our SDI is integrated with the overall data infrastructure, often called e-government or digital government. Yeah, starting with the return on investment, and there are a few recommendations here. They do not go directly on standards, but on a higher level, communication of location data and location-enabled digital public services. How do we raise awareness? How do we raise understanding? And we score, or Norway scores quite high on this. This is not only the Norwegian Mapping Authority, this is about the Norwegian STI. And yeah, on another of these recommendation, which you see to the left here, we do not score that high. This is more on the process of searching, finding, accessing location data. And it's not an evaluation of how easy it is to find things in our GeoPortal. It is related to how easy it is to find the same information in this DCAT portal. I have one more on standardization and reuse, where we do not score that high. For example, requirement 12, apply relevant standards to develop a comprehensive approach for spatial data modeling, sharing and exchange to facilitate integration and digital public service. And this is from the 2019 questionnaire, and since that we have established this model DCAT, which makes it easier to understand and also exchange geospatial information in these digital public services. So this is just one example of return of investment. Yes, that's all. So we have still a few minutes for questions, right?
Yes, we still have a few minutes for questions. I don't see any hands raised. Is there anybody with a question for Morten? Emmanuel says, thanks a lot for the information on return on investment.
You're welcome. That's always the hard part of what we do, this return of investment. Difficult.
I think it can be compared to planting trees. You may not reap the rewards immediately, but in the long run, you wouldn't want to be without.
That's true. I know that our digitization agency, for every improvement they want to do, they need to run some macroeconomic analysis just to check the return of investment. And I was involved getting some numbers from my organization on this, and that was about information management in general. And for each Norwegian krone you put into information management, you get so and so many Norwegian crowns back. And I can tell you the number was astronomical.
I believe it. I believe it. I think that the value of quality data can never be underestimated.
Yeah, that's the new oil. That's what we call it in Norway.
I'm going to remember that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
If I may ask you to stop sharing your, is there any other question? I don't see any other questions. Any comments? I see the habit is that I have to switch on my video while you so that you can see me struggle with looking for the screen where I last put the presentation. No, that's not it, but that one will do. Well, next in line within the next 3 minutes, so we will still give a couple of minutes in time. It will be Latin America Metadata Profile, LAMP version 2, and it will be presented by Pablo Morales. So when he is ready and in the room, we will still give a couple of minutes for people who are still joining, and I see he's ready to share his screen. I think if you don't mind, let's just give the 3 minutes or the 2 minutes that's left, because I know there are a lot of people that depend on us to be on time so that they can join for the presentation that they most want to see. But you can start by telling us a joke.
One second, please. Yes, perfect. Hello everyone. My name is Pablo Morales. I am editor and coordinator of the Latin American Metadata Profile, LAMBI2, of the Pan American Institute of Geographic and History. And I was a coordinator of the working group that developed this profile. Yes. First, I will talk about the PAIGH. Yes, then we will review LAMBI2. Finally, we will see the main feature of the LAM. The Pan American Institute of Geographic and History was created on February 7, 1928. Yes, the PAIGH is an international scientific and technical organization of the Organization of American States, dedicated to the generation of transferred knowledge in the areas of cartography, geography, history, and geophysics. Currently, 21 countries participate in PAIGH. Yes, in each country, PAIGH has a national representation through the Geographic Institute or Cartographic Institute. LAMBI2 was prepared by the Pan American Institute of Geographic and History with the cooperation of the CAF, Developed Bank of Latin America, with the GeoSur program, and the technical advisors of the National Geographic Information Center of the National Geographic Institute of Spain, an editorial team with a working group with 40 professionals for 13 countries. In LAM, we use several standards. The main standards are metadata, yes, fundamentals, and XML scheme, yes, profile and data quality. The LAMBI2 methodological step in LAMTIME, we start first version of LAMBI2 by the editorial team in 2015. The second, LAMBI2 review by the National Geographic Information Center of Spain. Next, LAMBI2 review by Working Group Latin American Profile. Next, the consensus meeting with the working group, yes, DOC. And finally, LAMBI2 document publication with XM scheme. LAMBI2 was declared by PAIGH as the Pan American standard to develop metadata in 2017. LAMBI2 has the following package to organize the metadata with With Lambda2, I make complete metadata of multiple types of resource, imagine, dataset, service, table, etc. Lambda2 has more than 200 metadata elements, but with Lambda2 has 23 mandatory minimum elements to document dataset and 16 minimum elements to document web service. Yes, it's easy, yes, its implementation. Lambda2 only has metadata element from the ISO standard for geographic information, includes metadata element to document the quality of the information according to ISO 19157. And Lambda2 has an XML scheme for your network. To increase the use of Lambda2, it is expected to be able to implement Lambda2 on S3 platform in the coming years. Since 2018, the PAGIH with the CENIC, yes, or Center National Information, sorry, with Spain, yes, PAGIH with Spain have given virtual courses on metadata to hundreds of professionals to Latin American have been trained in metadata and Lambda2. Lambda2 is beginning used more and more by the country of the region, examples of use in Chile, Colombia, and Argentina. Lambda2 is available in English and Spanish on the following websites. In this website, no, is the PAGIH and GeoSur website. Thank you for all.
Thank you so very much. Is there anybody with questions? Anybody with questions, inspiration, comments? It reminds me, listening to all the presentations today, the video that I showed that you couldn't hear the dialogue of, but I could, one of the members of TC211 very plainly states that standards are so important because we're all doing the same thing and we all have the same business, and standards have made it easier for all of us to get the job that we need to get done more efficiently and effectively. We have a roadmap. Probably if you can stop sharing your screen if you want. There is a question. There is a question. Probably please don't go away. There's a question from Effort Blues from Standards Australia. He says, do you have much trouble convincing people to generate extensive metadata rather than the minimum? I think he means, do you have trouble convincing people to populate the 200 instead of the 16? You're on mute at the moment.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I have a very problem. Yes, it's not easy in American use one standard. Yes, we don't have, for example, Inspire as a Europe. We necessary a framework, yes, to use our standard.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments or inspiration that someone would like to give?
Peter raised his hand.
Peter, sorry, I can't see all the raised hands. Peter, if you can, you have the floor.
Yeah, so Pablo, I started in a way with a question similar to Evert's, but then slightly separate part. Do you have any problem getting software implementations to pay attention to a national or regional profile rather than simply saying they want to implement the ISO standard?
Yes, we have a trouble to implement the land. Currently, only is available to GeoNetwork, but we working to implement to Esri platform. Yes, I hope in the next years we have an implementation to Esri. The Esri is the more common platform to make a map and document the geographic information.
Thank you. The same two major implementations that we've had to relate to as well, and encourage. And GeoNetwork obviously is open source. We can find people to contribute, but with Esri, we had to present a short paper explaining why we thought our national profile was worth them supporting. I think they are doing the work. So good luck with that. I hope it should work for you. Have at least a whole continent asking for the same thing.
Any more questions? I see that you get applause in the participants bar, Pablo, so thank you so much, and good luck on all the work and on the future of everything that you are doing, because there's, for every version 2, it means that there will forever be a version 3 coming. We are ahead of schedule slightly. We are ahead of schedule by 10 minutes. Now, I'm unsure if we should continue with the next presentation, because I see Graham is with us, or if we should wait and give a 10-minute break to allow for people that wants to join that presentation to join us. What are your thoughts? Do you want to go ahead? Does nobody want to speak to me? So I'm gonna.
I think we could go ahead if we would not see a problem with since we are ending nearing the end of the seminar. So
we are nearing the end, but I see that we do have participants that are asking us if we will wait, because I think there are people, as indicated, that are joining presentations on the minute. And as I'm watching the participation fluctuate during the sessions, I know that people. But Graham, I think it could just result in more questions for you. If you're up for it, I think we are happy for you to continue.
All right, yeah, Marna, whatever you like. If you want me to continue or I can wait, I'm good either way, and I enjoy questions for sure.
We are always in the mood for a show tune as well.
That I'm not too sure I could do, but I could try it. So let me know if you want me to go ahead, I can.
The only thing that I have that I can fill the time with is I can attempt to show you the 4-minute video again with sound this time. Would you be up for that? Or will I be boring you?
should you just play the sound and not to show the video?
Oh, yes, then you can match it up in your imagination. That will be so good. Just give me a second. Let me just get everything, because just give me 1 second. If you can't hear it, please shout very loudly. Hang on. share screen. There it goes. So now it's shared.
Sound.
Yay! We have liftoff. Please remember the number of standards are out of date. This was done in June.
We have an important thing to do, task to do. Standards are important for GIS data, production data, maintenance and data products to make things easier. If everyone does it the same way, it will become much easier. So GIS standardization is important.
The important thing that we started out for was, well, why ISO TC211 and OGC, for example, exist is because we have to be able to interoperate between people doing the same thing.
ISO is important because standardization is really the foundation of making civilization work.
I think the standardization is important because it makes interoperability a possibility, and I've been working with this subject for 26 years.
And so I've been involved with standards, and I think it's extremely important going back to the 80s. So that's why I continue to be involved in various aspects of it, particularly standards that's related to the geodetic sciences and geodetic coordinate systems. That's my expertise.
And the motivation is, of course, to implement these standards in the national SDI.
I work for the National Mapping Agency, and that's mainly now a data business, and open standards for data are very important to us because otherwise our customers would have to all use the same software.
And standards are important to share data across different system architectures, and also standards are important to bring people together and exchange knowledge.
My group, my working group is working on geographic information available to everybody in the world. So if you are in anywhere with any device, you should be able to access geographic information. So to do that, we need standard. Otherwise, it cannot be achieved. So that is the line of work that I do. And
I've been acting as the liaison between OGC and ISO TC211 for 6 years now. As many people are aware, OGC and ISO have a long-standing relationship and are dependent upon each other for standardization efforts. We have a lot of common members, a lot of common interests, and it's been instrumental for us to be able to participate meeting to meeting and in every activity in ISO TC211 for the past 6 years.
Especially at this time in the world, it's important to have more accurate geometry in the mobility sector. We want autonomous vehicles to know exactly where they are, and we also want them to have on board the latest and the most updated information about the traffic rules and accidents or other events on the road network. So location and position is really important. TC211 can provide that in a much better fashion than TC204 can itself. That's why we are collaborating at the moment.
And our standard is very important to manage and encourage the people in Japan to how to carry out their work. So that's why we are very appreciative to work this project. Thank you.
We can share information. We can move up to information and knowledge. So that's it.
There you go. And I think we are as close to the time as we are going to get. So Graham, I'm going to hand the floor over to you.
Okay, thank you, Marna. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can everyone see this okay? I assume everyone can if I don't hear. All right, thank you, Marna. So hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend this TC211 Standards in Action seminar and to listen to this talk regarding Canada's ISO story. This talk today will be about the future of Canada's use of standards and Canada's past and future involvement in ISO and other standards organizations. Today, the talk will include some of the standards organizations that Canada, Natural Resources Canada, and the Canada Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation is involved in under GeoConnections. And for the historical context of this talk, a lot of it is from former convener Doug O'Brien. So I thank him for providing input on that. Doug is retired now, but is active in ISO as we're all aware. And he provided me with a lot of the historical aspect of ISO's involvement because frankly, I wasn't alive at the time, but when ISO was basically started and the standardization initiatives related to TC211 really came to fruition. And so standards, although it is something that is not widely talked about or known to some outside of our arena of expertise, is, in my opinion, the backbone of the fluid movement of things. And so that aligns a lot with many of the comments that were given in the video that we just saw. And think of the difficulties of moving traffic or cars, or if roads and signs were not standardized, or difficulties related to using electricity for appliances if plugs were all different sizes, right? As Doug had mentioned, it's the backbone of civilization. The same holds true for data and geodata with a spatial component. If things are not distributed or used in common formats or ways, it makes them more difficult to use or even understand in most cases, for those who are unfamiliar with the information or data provided. So when we talk of standards, they are a norm for a repeatable task or a norm for a created method, process, or practice or outcome. In a way, it is an agreed upon way of doing things that involves people coming together like us today and agreeing on direction and things. And sometimes that requires a lot of negotiation or communication. And it is usually performed by an organization that brings these people together, like the organization today we're involved in, the International Organization for Standardization. It is important to note that certain standards organizations share standards. And so I've noticed in recent involvement that sometimes different organizations refer to the same standard using different names or different references based on that organization they're most accustomed with. And this is the case in some instances with TC211 and OGC standards, for example, where we have OGC's Web Map Service, which is ISO 19128, and the Web Feature Service, which is ISO 19142. And so I think it's important when we're working in these international environments and different regions, people may find this confusing. And so oftentimes when we're sitting around the table and having these discussions in the international environment, it's something to be pretty cognizant about. Relating to Canada's history, standards are helpful for us for moving things around more easily, making things more interoperable. For example, if data is organized in a more easily understandable way, it makes it easier for people to use it that are not experts. The first Canadian GIS, or Geographic Information System, was established by a UK-Canadian scientist, Dr. Roger Tomlinson, who was working with the Canadian Land Inventory in the mid-1960s. Internationally, this has been recognized as one of the first geographic information systems. This land inventory was developed because it was impossible to build a land inventory out of paper maps, right? And to be able to extract statistical data from it. And later years, there was a second version envisioned, but it was difficult to build up this second version that was made earlier, because there was a lack of standards that existed for the previous version. And so this was a bit of the motivation towards Canada's interest in geospatial standards. And so, as I mentioned before, Doug O'Brien from IDON Technologies from Canada, together with David McKellar of the Canadian Department of National Defence, wrote the first proposal to establish TC211 to create international geostandards. And there was Henry Tom of the US National Bureau of Standards, who worked to include participation of the Pan American Institute of Geography and History and other equivalent groups in other parts of the world, including many countries from Asia. And at the same time, the Comité Européen de Normalisation in Europe was developing Pan-European standards. CEN was led by Olaf Ostensen of Norway and François Sage of France. And so prior to TC211, there were many different diverse standards developed by different organizations in various countries, all with varying purposes and formats. Some international organizations such as NATO, Defense Geospatial Information Working Group, and the IHO, International Hydrographic Organization, developed ways of doing this, doing these standards to address their needs in the 1990s. One of the major developments was the creation of the Digital Chart of the World, four-country project led by US with Canada, the UK, and Australia. Esri was the prime contractor to the US government and IDON to the Canadian government. And this led to the creation of a set of operational standard specifications that became part of DigiWig, DigiWig's Digest, the Digital Geographic Exchange Standard. And at the same time, the Open GRASS user community extended their common work on the open source GRASS software to the establishment of open data access standards and formed the OGC, as we know today, or the Open Geospatial Consortium. This has now become a major worldwide industrial and academic consortium whose standards and implementation specifications interwork closely with those with ISO. So the OGC introduced the concept of the model-based standards, and the initial plan of work for the first 20 standards from ISO TC211 was taken from the work plan from CEN 287. Again, this is information that Doug was most kindly able to share with me. Later at the Oxford meeting of TC211 in 1998, bear with me. Back on my right slide. In 1998, imagery, gridded, and coverage data work was added to the work plan for TC211. And that work plan has since expanded to include 80 published standards and over 20 in development. And so there is a close collaboration with 37 external liaison organizations, and in particular with the UNGGIM, United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, which we'll touch on a bit in a few minutes. So in the now or present day, we work with ISO and many other standards organizations by building what is referred to as the CGDI, or the Canadian Geospatial Data Infrastructure. So with SDIs, we not only use ISO standards, but standards from other organizations. And the connections of this Canadian Spatial Data Infrastructure are promoted by the GeoConnections program within Natural Resources Canada, which is our Canada's head mapping agency. This program is a national program that includes promotion of standards. So we're about promoting standards to the community and people within the population. We support innovation and collaboration on infrastructure solutions as well. And so we do that through promoting what we call the SDI concept, which we're all fully aware of. And this system is obviously based on standards that enable usage of geodata and services in real time. In this program, we are mandated to advance the Canadian infrastructure data policy standards and technologies, resources, and collaboration needed to make this happen, both domestically and internationally. And this is achieved through partnerships and investments that meet the needs of the public and address federal priorities such as climate change, risk mitigation and things like that. A major contributor to CGDI as we are today is working together on is the International Organization for Standardization. It's one of the largest in the world. It's based on a model of country participation. And here we have people who participate in the committees that ISO has to develop standards. So as myself and the convener for Working Group 6, we sit on the imagery working group, and Canada leads the imagery working group as well. And I had mentioned that, and then we also work in geodetics, the accurate measurement of the Earth, and have members that sit on other working groups, including Working Group 7. So 38 countries participate, as we know, in ISO. And there are many standards that we utilize in Canada from ISO. We use the 19115 metadata standard, both the previous version, and we're starting to use the more recent version in some of our applications and systems. And ISO's 1913 XML schema implementation, we use that. And as well, this is done in such applications for RadarSat imagery within what we call Canada's Earth Observation Data Management System. And we all, within our country as well, we're very, very accustomed to using 19128, 2005 version. A web map server interface for sharing maps on the web, and that's done through such platforms as the Federal Geospatial Platform and what we call our Open Maps platform through the federal government. We use web feature services, so 19142, as well as 19123, ISO 19123 for coverages. For sharing data over the web, and we do so in such applications as the Canadian Hydrographic Service bathymetry products. So data related to the bottom of our near oceans and intercoastal areas. Canadian, the forms, we also use standards related to sensor web enablement. And we do so for transportation of goods to market and by rail. So for example, companies use sensors to enable rail supply chain optimization for delivery of goods to market. An example of this that I've seen has been related to potash in Canada. So we have a strong policies to enable open and easy access to data, and that includes geospatial data. That's part of our policy platform. For a country that's an intermediate power with a relatively small population and a large landmass, Canada ranks high in our global rankings for open data. Such data is available through the World Wide Web Foundation. Our access point to data is the FGP, opendata.ca, which can be browsed by subject or keyword. And a simple browse under that platform for nature and environment results in over 72,000 records for geospatial information. So the FGP is a Government Canada internal website where the government's most relevant data can be found easily and viewed on maps to support evidence-based decision-making and foster innovation. So we find that our backbone of this platform are ISO and OGC geospatial standards based on web services and ISO metadata standards with a Canadian applied profile referred to as NAP and HNAP. So our North American profile and harmonized North American profile are both components that have been used in Canada, notably the harmonized NAP for FGP. The FGP allows for the integration of economic, social, and environmental geospatial data from multiple departments and agencies to better support location-based decision-making on a range of complex issues. And so we're working now towards, I touched upon our future direction is to build upon open government and open data initiatives to further the FGP Open Maps portal, and the vision that is being discussed and moving towards is creating a Canadian geospatial platform. So stay tuned to see this future potential implementation. As well, we mentioned previously, we work closely with the OGC. The OGC has over 500 members and leaders in geospatial involved in the consortium, some of which are major companies and government bodies. And Natural Resources Canada is a strategic member, which means we are given the opportunity to develop strategy with OGC. And it provides us access to the standards, technology, resources, and the people working within OGC. And it's focused on developing practical initiatives, exploring new standards and implementing them. As well, in our portfolio of standards that we work with, Canada and Natural Resources Canada is also a participant in the World Wide Web Consortium, W3C, with its mission to lead the web to its full potential. And specifically, we have some world leaders in the development of maps for HTML or MapML, hypertext markup language, the language of the web. With MapML, we are working to standardize maps in browsers. So the vision and the work that's being done is to allow for the flexibility to drag a map web service from a feed and drop that into a web browser to view it directly within a web browser. And the vision here, or the application here, is to allow any user to view geospatial data, just not experts, developing the next generation of spatial technologies for the web. Another important organization we work with and that uses standards is the Arctic Spatial Data Infrastructure. It's a multi-country collaboration that has developed a spatial data infrastructure for the Arctic. For mapping and visualization, and the key here is that it's open and free. The standards developed by the previous organization serve as the backbone of Arctic SDI, including importantly ISO standards. Canada is one of 8 participating nations. And the benefits of supporting and participating in the Arctic SDI include the technology and data access needed to monitoring and analyzing this important region of the world. Using science-based data, and this collaboration is a very good example of diplomacy. A large portion of the Canada is found within the Arctic region, and managing this area sustainably and equitably for its people and inhabitants requires cooperation, and it requires technology. And so Canada is an active member of Arctic SDI, which is largely based on TC 211 standards, and is supporting what is being built now, which is the latest strategic plan for building a standards-based digital Arctic. So that's the vision being developed now, is the view of developing a digital Arctic for the North. This vision being developed, which we are hoping the world community will support through cooperation, is the development of a digital Arctic or digital twin to effectively manage this sensitive region through cooperation and diplomacy. And the ASDI builds best practices of standards and their implementations and data flows for participants, and has some very strong linkages to the International Hydrographic Organization and Arctic Regional Marine Spatial Data Infrastructure Working Group, ARMS-DWIG, and the Arctic Council. So there's a link to the portal. If people haven't heard about it, you can click on the link to find out more and see the portal itself. Finally, we also participate and support in the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, known as UNGGIM. And this is a UN initiative to foster the development of geospatial information and technology. And this includes standards and their use. And so Canada collectively participates in meetings, responds to requests for support and policy development, and we support developments of documentation to help people, countries develop their SDI and geomatics capacity. And Natural Resources Canada coordinates this at the federal level for Canada. And much like the other involvement and leadership, our involvement here is to support trends, show diplomacy, and improve sharing of experiences and knowledge through leadership in SDI. So I thank you for taking the time to see some of the standards, initiatives, and organizations that Canada, Natural Resources Canada, and the Canada Centre for Mapping and Earth Observation and Geoconnections program is involved with ISO standards in general, and geospatial. I hope you enjoyed this history talk, and as well what our future direction vision is. So here are the members of GeoConnections team that makes a lot of this collaboration happen. Just not myself, but there's a great group of members and leadership that support this collaboration. And I thank you, and I wish you a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Graham? I don't see any hands up. Is there anything that you would like to type into the chat? Any comments?
I hope the talk was interesting for the participants. So
it was, and I really appreciate that you shared the contact people in the last slide, because I believe that's important. Different countries are on different points or at different waypoints in the path to get to standards implementation. And the only way we will get there is if we have mentorship from countries that have walked that road prior to us, because that's, I think, what we need to do.
Absolutely. And Marna, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, like, you know, in terms of being able to collaborate and show diplomacy and share experiences, it's interesting to see some of the conversations that were had before about, you know, how to deal with profiles related to metadata and the issues related to implementing them in certain software. Like, you know, Canada itself has experienced such issues, you know, and choosing which direction to go towards in terms of profiles and their support and options available for software for that. And so, you know, those conversations, it's funny because it seems that everyone's having similar sorts of not issues, but maybe challenges in implementing them. So, you know, environments like this where we can share experiences and provide help to others or different perspectives on maybe the way to address the challenges is super helpful, I think, for everyone, right? So.
No, completely. Because with every standard that we publish and with every standard that's adopted and implemented by a country, we have someone to ask, we have a point of call, we have someone that can guide the way and make the challenges just a little bit less daunting, because we heard a couple of times today that resources are the challenge. And it's not just the challenge in one country, it's the challenge in every single country. So the way we can make it easier for resources in order to implement is if we share knowledge with each other and little tips and tricks to help clear the way and to make everything just a little bit more harmonized and a little bit more friendly and a little bit less daunting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You may stop the share of your screen if you want.
All right.
Beautiful ladies and gentlemen. We have reached the end of our program for today. I thank you for your participation. We were represented by both hemispheres. We were represented by 5 continents, multiple time zones and languages. So for some of you, this was good morning. For some of you, this was good afternoon. And for some of you, you enjoyed this with a glass of wine. I envy you that, because the purpose of days like this is we need to raise awareness. We need to monitor what we are doing in each of our different countries, because I think the work that we do is sometimes very lonesome. You sometimes feel very alone as you are struggling with the implementation of this or that. And if you know that someone has had the same struggles as you before, it makes it a little less lonely to sit there in your isolated room where we are all now struggling. So we need to inspire, we need to learn, and we need to motivate each other to take this process further and make it more efficient. Because in Doug's words, we need to make civilization work. So if there's any other comments from you.
And we need to have fun, Marna, as well.
We need to have fun. I miss the ability to say, so where are we going now? Let's go have fun. Now that the work is done, let's go have fun.
And thank you, Marna, for guiding us through the entire day here with all the presentations. So thanks to you as well.
And thanks to all our presenters today. I think you all did an amazing job. Thank you for being here and for being on time and for being within time. So I'm going to close the meeting now and wish you all a very happy day.